And I can say this to the people who say that there's no product yet. Dan has built 2 of them. If they think he's not going to build the 3rd one, they're crazy, because this is the one that he's always wanted to build.
Hey friends, thanks so much. We really appreciate you tuning in. We have a little departure for you today. We're going to go in a little bit of a different direction and talk about Steemit. We're going to talk about cryptocurrencies and the controversy as it pertains to EOS. And I have Justin on the line. He is one of the co-founders of Bitshares. He's also the founder of Beyond Bitcoin over on Steemit. And he goes by the name Official Fuzzy on Steemit. Justin, how are you?
Very well. How are you, Sean?
Good, man. Thanks for joining us. We really do appreciate it very much. And I know you're personal friends of Dan Larimer. I think he's probably a genius, given the fact that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Steemit and Bitshares alone have more blockchain activity in terms of total transactions on a daily basis than do Bitcoin and Ethereum combined. Is that true?
This is correct. This is, it's a little known fact, and it's very, I would say it's kind of under the surface in the crypto community, because there's a layer of hype around a lot of the technology, because it's still in early stages. But yes, that is true, and I think people are starting to learn more and more about it, and that's why EOS is starting to become a very big industry player before it even is truly born.
Okay, I want to ask you about EOS. That is the new brainchild of Dan Larimer, and I believe a company that he's partnering with called Block One. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the thing. And I want to circle back to Steemit, because Steemit is a wonderful alternative to Facebook and even YouTube. And many of us YouTubers are turning to Steemit and opening accounts there as well. But I want to ask you about EOS. There's been some controversy. EOS is showing up on Cliff High's latest report as a crypto to watch, and one that could potentially really become valuable in the future. Dan Larimer, of course, the brains behind Steemit and I guess Bitshares. So let's talk about the controversy about EOS. There's been videos made, 3 red flags about EOS, one of which is that the offering for EOS coins is being done through Ethereum, but EOS ultimately will have its own blockchain, having nothing to do with the Ethereum blockchain, which has left many to ask, what will the value of these EOS tokens be worth? Will they be valueless? The other thing is, this initial coin offering is going on for like a year, could result in, hundreds of millions of dollars being raised, and there's just some red flags. And I wanted to get you on, since you're personal friends with Dan Larimer, to help us understand if these red flags are valid, or is there more to the story and you're going to share it with us? What do you make of EOS?
Well, if we're going to go into EOS, I would say that one of the first red flags, the big one that you've talked about, was that they're giving you kind of a placeholder token on EOC20, which is on the Ethereum chain. And it's kind of a place where you can hold various tokens that are connected to Ethereum, right? But there's a common term in Bitshares and in some spaces within the cryptocurrency ecosystem called UIAs, user-issued assets. And user-issued assets are essentially an IOU that will then, it's a way of saying you are on the ledger, right? You are on the blockchain, and you have a token that is going to represent something in the future when a real live chain is launched, right? Because a lot of the time, whenever a developer, and you're putting together a team to build something amazing, you need resources, right? And if you're going to sell a product, you need people to fund that product, right? And if we're going to open it up for people in a decentralized fashion to be able to take part in the launch of these new decentralized autonomous companies, corporations, and even in the case of EOS, dApps, decentralized apps, then we want them to be funded. And we want to also enable, and we also want to enable them to be able to distribute these tokens to a community who will be able to, who will have an incentive to support that ecosystem, right? And maybe potentially, if we're lucky, because this is a risky space, right? If we're lucky, everything does fall in line, And we have these amazing DACs that work like BitShares and Steem, and they get adopted, and they start being used in the mainstream. And once that happens, now we can start replicating those models across the world. And people will be able to do this. They'll have these tools. But when it comes down to the EOS token itself, I'll just really quickly summarize, and I'll say, what you're doing when you buy into this crowd sale is you are getting yourself onto a ledger from your wallet's address. You hold the private key to it. No one else does. And you're on this cryptographic ledger. And someday, as soon as they launch the actual live tokens, you will be distributed those tokens on the live chain, right?
So the EOS tokens in their current form are essentially an IOU for the other official token once it's launched.
Yes, because you can't give a person a token in a chain that isn't live yet, right? Just like what Ethereum did. Ethereum, essentially, they took money, but they really never gave any tokens out. They just kind of sat there, right? But what Dan was saying was, let's give people the ability to. There's something that goes back into the history, and this is why I say it takes a little bit longer than 20 minutes. It goes into the history of something called share dropping. And share dropping is essentially saying, if you are on a ledger, we will distribute tokens to everybody who's on that ledger, right? So if you hold Bitcoin and I share drop a bunch of tokens onto Bitcoin, now all of those tokens, all those people on the Bitcoin network got a new value proposition, right? But what Dan's doing is he's taking that technical aspect right there, and he's applying it to say, we will let you have tokens that are tradable on the market today before it launches, because I want to make sure it is as free market a solution as possible. Because if he allows it to trade on the market while they're adding this simulated mining that you kind of see, right, then it allows the market to establish a price for the people who are doing the simulated mining via the ICO. Well, we don't call it the ICO. They call it selling a product because, let's face it, when you're in America, it's a little bit harder to innovate these days. So you have to kind of be careful what you call things.
Yeah, Jeff Berwick jokes about that, and he calls us the land of the slaves. I mean, this really is. I mean, he always says that Americans aren't free, even though they believe they are. And, I did watch that entire interview between Berwick and Dan Larimer talking about EOS, and it was a very compelling conversation. And so with Dan Larimer, we have proof of concept and proof of talent through Steemit alone. And Dan Larimer does not strike me as a con man. So I just want to get that out there, too, as it pertains to trying to take a stake in this EOS offering.
Well, and there's one thing, you bring up a very good point. There are a lot of people out there who like to say that Dan is a scammer. But it's the irony of this entire thing for me, okay, is the same people who call Dan a scammer for creating BitShares, which is a decentralized exchange after Mt. Gox destroyed everybody who held tokens there, right? And after all these centralized exchanges either lost or stole money from their customers, who knows, right? After Dan did that, he built Steem, and he has kind of jumped from chain to chain that he's built. And he's been part of the chain while he builds it. But then what he does is he says, I am just a ship builder. I let other people find the captain, right? I find the captains and let them captain the ship. And what did Satoshi Nakamoto do? Satoshi Nakamoto launched Bitcoin, did help with it consistently for quite some time, and then let it go into the community. Right? And let the community take control of it. So I find myself wondering, and I've always had this cognitive dissonance with this one argument about Dan being a scammer, because if he's a scammer, then Satoshi Nakamoto, the founder of all cryptocurrency essentially, is a scammer too. Do you see where I come
Yeah,
from with
no,
this?
I mean, I understand. I think there's some parallel there. And again, though, we're talking about the intelligence of somebody and the history of somebody. And, having gotten to understand how Steemit works to some extent now, and I have a Steemit account, guys, if you want to check it out, it's Steemit at SGT Report. It is a very compelling, easy to post at format. And it's free. And in fact, not only is it free, you can get paid for posting, and you can get paid for liking other people's posts, and you can get paid for commenting and taking part in the community, which is the antithesis to Facebook, where all they care about is getting your information and getting your data and finding out what you like to shop for and what you're talking about, in complete Big Brother Orwellian surveillance state over there at Facebook, where they make billions upon billions and you make nothing. So that's one of
Yeah.
the things that I think is very compelling about Steemit, which was the brainchild of Dan Larimer. And now I just want to, and you can comment on that if you like, but I also want to ask you about this longer crowd sale. When I asked you about it, you told me that it's harder for any single person to come in and buy it all up in a short period of time. And you said super wealthy whales in crypto love short crowd sales. But this really pisses them
Yes.
off, doesn't it? You said, I wonder who might have motive to defame such a mechanism of distribution. And I thought that was an interesting point.
Well, one of the big things that people like to do is say, there's a cap on this token. We're going to be very good and nice, and we're not going to allow anybody to donate more than $100 million or something to this effect, right? It might be a lot less, but let's say we've got a bunch of big whales behind the scenes, and we say, and I might get yelled at or find secret enemies in crypto for saying this, but I'll say it anyway because it's true. And if we're going to take this mainstream, people need to learn. If I collaborate with a bunch of big whales in an ecosystem, and I say we're going to do a crowd sale for, let's say we'll just cap it off at 5 million, and we buy up all the token pretty much with our own money and pump the price out of it. Right now, we launch it using some crypto networks or some high paid marketers, and we just we get a couple exchanges that are close to us, and we say, hey, we're going to launch it at this time, can you connect us up at this time? And of course, the exchange, it brings volume to the exchange, so they love it. So this is partially free market, of course, and I don't want to put it down, but at the same time, if you're a little minnow out there, when these whales do this, it pumps up the price of a coin, and it makes it look like it's extremely valuable until they get enough people to buy in, and then they sell it all off. And they call these pump and dump crews, which is very similar, I'm sure, in the stock market. But this is kind of like an ultra penny stock space at this point in time, right?
Right. Yeah, I see your point. And then one of the other red flags that was brought up about EOS that I thought we could address here is number 3. The terms of service say nothing is required by law for them to give you tokens. And you said there's a couple answers for that. Dan and many people living in EOS live in America. This means we are at a severe regulatory disadvantage to countries that have even more authoritarian systems, but fewer resources to carry out that agenda. If I live in America and I'm building and funding blockchains because I'm a patriot, what choice do I have? So let's just talk about the terms of service here as it pertains to EOS, right? I think it's kind of where we began, which is how are people going to make sure that they get these tokens when EOS goes live in about a year?
Okay, so first, what I'm going to say is this: I do not work directly for EOS or EOS, as people like to call it. I call it EOS. Everybody has their own way of saying it. I do not work for EOS, but I come from a historical perspective that will shine some insight, right? Give some insight into these things. And after the DAO, I'm sure you're familiar with it, in Ethereum, and after that whole hack took place and people lost funds, there was now precedent set, right? There was a large group of people who felt like they were wronged, and I'm sure that there were lawsuits that were filed. And because of this, now there is starting to be a little bit more heat in this quote-unquote ICO space, which is what they like to call it. And essentially all it is it's in this space, you have to be very careful whether you're selling a token or if you're selling a product. And the truth really is that we're not selling tokens. That's what it seems to be happening in the entire space. We're just selling tokens, and we really don't have a value proposition to it, right? What we're doing here, or what they're doing here, is they're selling a product, a decentralized app building platform for devs who want to build things like Steem and Bitshares and all these other great ideas. They didn't have a place where it was not all hacked together. It wasn't too slow. It didn't clog up for hours and sometimes days like Ethereum has, right? And because of these things, EOS has sending to account names, for instance, directly in there. It has no transaction fees, just like Steem has no transaction fees, right? It scales, it can allow multiple chains that scale like Bitshares and Steem, and with usability like Bitshares and Steem, to all exist in parallel on the chain. So it can deliver on these promises, like Dan likes to say, right? And because of that, they feel they're selling a product. And I do agree with that. I do agree that they're selling a product. Now, the tokens are going to be used as stake within the ecosystem. So if I, kind of like in Steem, because Steem, remember, is the little brother of EOS, right? Just like in Steem, you have bandwidth, and the stake that you hold locked up in the system, or maybe not locked up in EOS. I'm not sure yet on that. But the stake that you hold in the system gives you bandwidth in the network, and you can lease that bandwidth out, right? So the people who are buying into this, they will not have to pay transaction fees. They'll just own stake in the network while they build, right? So it makes them kind of a token holder, gives them an incentive to keep working within the network. And that also gives them kind of rights to a certain amount of the network pie. And if they use too much, they can sell it on another market, right? So they're creating an entire DApp ecosystem that can scale and have thousands of chains that scale like Steem and Bitshares.
Okay.
And that means that all of these tokens that exist right now that were coins, that were in ICOs, they're not going to be, I suspect, faring too well when things like EOS really come to fruition. And I can say this to the people who say that there's no product yet. Dan has built 2 of them. If they think he's not going to build the 3rd one, they're crazy, because this is the one that he's always wanted to build.
Right.
The other 2 were just helping him get there.
Now, let me ask you this, and without going on a 10-minute, Ethereum bash, I just want your opinion on whether or not you think EOS or EOS can be an Ethereum killer, or is it like Coke and Pepsi? There could be 2 equal but separate and different, entities, both successful. There's certainly a ton of corporations interested in Ethereum, engaged in and working with Ethereum and that technology, but your thoughts on EOS in the future? Is it an Ethereum killer, or will they both be successful?
That's a big question. Here's my answer. Okay, I am not all seeing, but Ethereum in its current state, the industry is there are a lot of, like I said before, it's kind of hacked together, and sure, there's a lot of big money behind it. So I'll say this: if it exists in 5 to 10 years, it'll exist as something completely different. It will have probably burned down from the ground, burned down and then risen up as a phoenix, like a blockchain can do. It's going to cost a lot of money for these big businesses that have a lot of money into Ethereum to turn it around. And I don't see how they're going to do it within the internal governance of the chain itself, because it's not quite where it needs to be. Now, with that said, I'm biased, and I did know, however, that because it did have some Goldman Sachs people who were in there, that Ethereum was going to go up pretty high at some point. People can even go on the Bitshares Talk forums when I talk about it.
Well, you know what? I want to say something too. It was a past Cliff High Alta report that indicated that at some point Ethereum will be up, I think it was 538, 568, somewhere in that neighborhood. So he has it poised as going much, much higher, and his ongoing projection for Bitcoin puts Bitcoin at 13,800 at some point. I think he said by February 2018. And well, you know what? People can say what they want about Cliff and the Webbot report, call him crazy or call him clairvoyant. Today we see Bitcoin at $3,353, and that's to say nothing of whatever Bitcoin Cash is at. So really, collectively, Bitcoin is now well beyond 3,500, and people thought he was nuts when he said it would hit 2,000, and here we sit at 3,500 plus.
Yeah, and I suspect we're going much higher. And I will say this, I want to make a big distinction between the market cap, because this is one thing that we all in the industry tend to get lost in, and it's a check that we always have to keep on ourselves. Market cap and technology in this space, because it's so new and it's so complex and it requires so much time to become well-versed in, especially with respect to the technology, there's a lot of what some people might call, well, I won't lie. There's a saying in the Wolf of Wall Street kind of people, dumb money, right? People just want to throw money at it thinking it's the next Bitcoin. And because of that, people who do have funding, they can help support these systems and bring them to a level where, they might not be at market caps that are sustainable, because a lot of them might not bring exactly the value propositions that they need to whenever they scale, right? And that's the biggest problem right now, because if you want an application that it runs at 28 transactions per second, that's not how Google got big. Google became huge because it did these searches very quickly, right? And that's what users want. Dan recognized this from the very beginning, and he kind of made some enemies of people who were afraid of maybe the changes that would and what those changes might do, because Dan never really liked mining as a distribution mechanism, because it's, as we can see, centralizing. Bitcoin has a total of 7 pools that really have any real level of control in it. That's the last time I checked. Dan, in things like BitShares, they have, quite a bit more decentralization and can go further. So there's a lot of innovation here. There's a lot of stuff that I won't call it a killer, because I never know what's going to happen with Ethereum. But with EOS, we have this juggernaut with 2 things that show what it can do, just in the bare bones levels of it.
Right.
And it's going to be a place where people can build on top of it, and they can scale. And if those other chains don't solve those problems, I can tell you right now, my grandma and your grandma will not be using it. Right? So I guess that's my answer. That's my answer. They won't be using the apps on those chains.
All right. Well, fair enough. And Cliff's latest report, which he sent me because I am interviewing him, I believe this coming Friday, does include a mention of EOS as a token that is on his radar and one to watch. So wanted to have this conversation about that controversy. And before we let you go, Justin, I want to talk just a little bit about Steemit and what you think is the beauty of Steemit and why people listening should open a Steemit account. And maybe everybody on Facebook, I tell you what, this would be a sea change for humanity. If everybody on Facebook right now would close their account and hop over to Steemit, that would be an absolute game changer, and it would send the New World Order, Big Brother powers, a very strong message that people are fed up and they're done with the surveillance state crap. So what do you think is the biggest 3 best things people should know about Steemit?
The 3 best things, and I'll give you the 3 worst things, because I'm not here to pump anything. I'm just here to give you the state of the network as I see it. On the good side, the three best things: there are no transactions. You are part of the network just by joining. You don't have to pay to participate. It's not paying to play. As far as you don't have to pay us to post there like every other blockchain, right? No transaction fees is an amazing aspect. Another amazing aspect is that it is everything is on an immutable blockchain, right? It's on a blockchain where all data is stored and it remains there. So if somebody comes by, and even they might take away your funding, somebody might take away your funding, SGT, by that downvoting. Somebody actually did this to me not too long ago. This is why I'll say the good things and the bad things. And of course, I'll boil them into 3 points, as you asked, though. There are more, of course, but I will say the second one is the fact that even if somebody downvotes you, they can never take your content off of there, right? If your content is posted there, they can downvote it. They can make it look like, this content has been flagged for material that you shouldn't look at or whatever. But what's that going to do? We all know about the Streisand effect. So that is another aspect that is valuable. And for those who don't know what the Streisand effect is, when you censor something, it becomes more popular, right? So it has that, and this is, I think, that was the strongest value proposition, I believe, for Steemit, right? But then in addition to all of that, it enables you to participate in a community and potentially earn something for something that you otherwise would probably not earn anywhere else. I know that if you post to Medium, which is a very similar site, you do not get paid for posting there. They get paid for posting there. And I also can say that it's like a community bank. So if you decide that you're going to put your money into Steam Power, you can actually have, if you don't want to put your money into Steam Power, you can put it into Steam Dollars and keep it at a price, but keep your money into something that is pegged close to the value of $1 for that stability. But if you want to have something where you can use kind of like the printing press of the Steemit ecosystem in a pretty transparent way, you can actually upvote people in content that you think is good. And if you want to increase the power of your upvote, put a little bit of your portfolio into Steam Power instead. And now you can do great community works, right? I might be a doctor and a multimillionaire, and I'm about to retire, and I say I'm going to put $500,000 into Steam Power, and I'm going to have a friend grow a grove of trees, of apple trees, and I'm going to upvote every time he gives away an apple to somebody who's in need. There's so many initiatives you could do, and that would be him being able to print money, essentially, all the time to build these things. And that's actually what I do with Whale Shares and Beyond Bits, but that's something that we could talk about at another time, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms. I mean, this stuff goes so deep. There's so much to it, and it's difficult for a lot of folks to understand how Steemit works. It's difficult for a lot of people to understand how these ICOs work. There is a barrier to entry, especially as it pertains to ICO. For instance, our grandparents,
Sure.
never going to take part in an ICO. My parents, never going to take part in an ICO. A lot of people still don't even know what Bitcoin is. I mean, doesn't that blow you away, Justin? At the end of the day, this is all still so new that there are people in my neighborhood right now, friends, neighbors, and colleagues that have never heard of Bitcoin, much less Ethereum or EOS or Litecoin or any of the other dozens of valid coins that are out there like Dash and so forth.
Yes, and what I believe is going to happen is we are still very early in crypto. I think that within the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see the space completely blow up with activity. And I think you're going to see thousands of chains within the next 5 to 10 years that are over hundreds of millions, that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars or higher. because people are going to start realizing that all of these blockchains are valuable ecosystems in and of themselves. Now, the one thing that we have to be careful about always, and something that I always urge people to be careful about, and this is something that I hope that everybody will take from Dan's lessons too, is one of the reasons why Dan made one of the things Dan made sure of before he left Steemit was that it was MIT open licensed software. And what that means is that people can build and use it to slightly change and modify it to make it better, or to make it for another use case, right? You might have, it's drawn from his concept of mutual aid societies, which you can actually go look up Dan Larimer on YouTube, mutual aid societies, and you will see what I'm talking about when I talk about Steem, right? And what it really goes down to is enabling people to have this technology and not get so tied up in, is this going to be the next chain worth $1 trillion? And instead say, how can we all become so well versed in this technology? Because it's like learning how to use a weapon, right? It's like learning how to use words to have our voice. This is another tool in the Patriots tool chest to be able to be uncensorable, to be able to have it where that you have an ecosystem that is all your own, where nobody can take the value away just by bringing a hammer in, right? Where the community itself can evolve and grow and rely and sustain itself, right? Rely upon and sustain itself. So these are the models. We're still in the very early stages. We have technology that scales. We have technology that is proven, that allows people to send to names, that allows them to, instead of, like in Bitcoin, a long hash, instead of having to pay transaction fees, it's free. And now you also pay, and now you can also get paid. And all of that is still nothing compared to the censorship resistance, right? So that's why I always lead with censorship resistance, because it's so important.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And, because we've seen the power that even these new upstart corporations like Patreon have. If they disagree with you ideologically, as they did with Lauren Southern, they could just turn her off. They just literally shut down her account with no recourse, no judge, no jury. It's the executioner is these corporations. If they don't like you at YouTube, they turn off your monetization. If they don't like a conversation you had with Sophia Smallstorm, as is the case with one of my videos, they give you a community strike and they don't tell you what the offensive language was that was used in a conversation about a topic. It's really quite amazing that these corporations have become so Orwellian and really so left-leaning, so Marxist.
Let's not forget Reddit either, right? Reddit did this, and then everybody moved because of Pizzagate, which is something that's very dear to my heart. I will fight to the death to keep my child safe, and I know a lot of other people will too. So why is Reddit censoring this? And then, sadly, why does everybody go to? And it's nothing against Vote.co's owner. It's just that they're using technology, the same technology that Reddit is. So it can be misused and abused so easily and censored, as in not censored as in downvoted and boohoo. I don't have any money, which it is boohoo. Don't get me wrong, but it's even on Steam you can't do that. But on these other platforms, they can just pick your data off. They can grab it, and it never existed. We're giving them God powers over this. If this is a video game, they just use the cheat code on us. And we can't have that, right? We can't have a middleman, a mediator that is biased and can manipulate the rules behind our backs.
Right.
That's a no-go.
Yeah, and that's what YouTube specializes in. And Google, too, is changing the rules in the middle of the game, right?
Yep.
That's what's so disturbing about it, is that now, and now they're going to assign teams, specialized, essentially NGOs, to go out and look through the videos and then and flag whatever they consider offensive content so that YouTube can then circle back and dig in even further. So now you've got essentially the Stasi right, out there,
Mm-hmm.
a private Stasi hired by YouTube to go out and look for challenging content, ideologically challenging content, content that is not liberal or Marxist or New World Order approved, New World Order
Yep.
approved, and they're going to flag it, and
Yep.
it's going to make free speech even more difficult. Not even free speech. It's going to make
Digital gulag.
reporting real news that much more difficult now on YouTube because they don't want it. They don't want the real news there. They don't want people talking about Pizzagate and Petagate and the plague of child sex trafficking, which for those paying attention know is 100% real because Steve Scalise made a PSA about the plight and the plague of human trafficking in this nation, and then he was shot. There was an assassination attempt made on his life. This stuff is very, very real, and it should not ever be flagged by YouTube, but it is. So that's why we need to turn to Steemit and other avenues to ensure that the real news does get reported. So that's...
I'll say that I think it's going to... Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say I think it's going to have a very interesting future, and I think that these experiments that we are working on, because let's face it, nobody in the space wants to call it an experiment because for some reason because they feel like it takes away the value to humanity. And I look at it completely the opposite way. I think we should invite each other to be part of the experiment. And if we can make money by being part of the experiment and being honest with ourselves in the process and rediscover our own value, especially in an individual and how that individual way joins up with a communal way, and we can actually, start working and iterating on this. We have almost like a republic. We have almost what our founding fathers wanted on a 3.0 level, right? Where you have various competing chains that are in this completely open market for innovation, right? But I also want to say that it's very important that we always remind ourselves, and I'll just close this part off with this, man. If anybody here goes out on Google, you can find where there are people getting RFID chips to spend their Bitcoin. And it's this movement that is seemingly cool. I don't know why it's cool, because I've never thought it's cool. I've been here since the very beginning. I don't think it's cool. And there are a lot of people pushing it. And I want you all to realize that the media that is going to become the most well-funded in cryptocurrency and the media that is going to be the most polished and the most beautiful on the surface is generally going to be media that is paid for to push an agenda. And we know that there is a group of people out there trying to push an agenda. And if we think that they will never try to use this technology with all the information we have available to us, we're going into a pen and letting them shut us away. And it's very important, and I hope you guys realize I'll never kill myself.
Yeah,
but
me
it's
either.
important that I say that.
Right.
But it's important, and it's this stuff is very serious, that we recognize that we have to learn to use this technology and not depend on things that seem like it makes it easier, but really takes all of our freedom away. Because that's literally what's at stake with this technology. But there are amazing things we can do with it in the process. On the other hand, if we fight it, if we fight that dark side of this technology.
Yeah, well, and I think you said... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because with every technology, there's a dark side and a good side, right?
Yeah.
Just like Jedis. Please consider joining the Beyond Bitcoin Hangouts, where you can talk about different cryptocurrencies and stuff like this. And you can talk about pretty much anything you want to. If you RSVP, right? Or afterwards, we have the Hangouts. We have the after party after our Hangouts, where it's completely open. You don't have to RSVP and talk about a topic. You can just talk shop. It's kind of, think of it as a mini conference or a meetup, a crypto meetup, where people can talk and just discuss what they believe, and do so in a way where we don't take offense and we don't lose sight of the real mission because of the money. Because the money is an important thing, but all it does is quantify our value and make it more efficient for us to interact. And when we lose touch with that, the money becomes a chain instead of an enabler. So our hangouts have always been designed for people to come join and discuss.
Are they the same time every week? When are these meetups?
They start at 9 a.m. Central or 1 p.m. UTC.
Every day?
Every Friday.
Every Friday. Got it. Okay, well, I really do appreciate your time, Justin. I appreciate the information. You guys can find Justin on Steemit as Official Fuzzy. And I really do appreciate all of this information. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. I know it's a departure, little detailed, little in the weeds as it pertains to cryptos, but anybody who's into this space at all, I think hopefully will have found this information valuable and the conversation very interesting. Justin, thank you.
Thank you, SGT.
All right, thank you. And guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate your support at sgtreport.com. Give us a like if you like the new website. Give us feedback if you don't. We really appreciate it. It's mobile friendly now, so that's a plus. And check us out at the Phaser and the libertymill.com as well. Real news 24/7. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.
President Trump is the first president in the history of the United States that has vowed to go after not only pedophiles, but the elite pedophiles. The world is run by elite pedophiles.